Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to today's TransIT 5.0 testing training. So today we will be looking at the new functionality around updating a global task and creating client-specific tasks in your own organization, how to add details to global workflows, and how to create and add client-specific workflows, and then how to the new way to upload an existing Excel spreadsheet, and then also how to execute and maintain a round of testing and the reports that are available inside TransIT. So if this is your first training session with us, a big reminder is that TransIT 5.0 is not going to be supported in Internet Explorer. And today's training is meant to be interactive. So we would like you all to sign into TransIT and follow along with us. So instead of signing into our production domain, you will be signing into our demonstration domain, which is from this hyperlink that is shown on my screen now. I also put it inside the chat if you wanted to access it from there. So you will still be signing in with your same username that you've always signed in with, but the password that you'll be signing in with is TransIT5. There's no character, nothing needs to be capitalized or anything like that. When it comes time that TransIT 5.0 goes live, you will still be signing on with your existing password. So there's no need to edit your password during this training. You might as well just keep it with the TransIT 5 as your password. So for starters, if I'm going to sign into our demonstration domain here. The first change that you'll see when signing into TransIT is that you'll first see this terms of service screen. And so it has our privacy policy, and it also has our terms of service, and both are displayed in a PDF if you care to actually look at them. But we do need you to accept the terms of service. So check the box here, and then you'll need to click accept.
Patty, I don't see the link to the demo environment in the chat.
It was way earlier. I just reposted it.
Okay.
Okay. So then with the terms of service, that's only going to be something that you need to accept the very first time that you sign into TransIT. As soon as you've accepted that, you won't have that screen displayed for you again. So then, for starters, you can see that our projects page, does look a little bit different than it used to look. The first thing I'll point out is if you're looking in the top right-hand corner here, we no longer have a gear icon displayed beside your name, but your name still is a hyperlink that you can click on. So if we click on our name in the top right corner, we now get the user settings page. And so the things that you can do from this page, you can set up and turn on your email and SMS notification settings. So that would be for if you're participating in a round of testing, and you want to have notifications about whether or not a step is falling behind, or if you have issues assigned to you, whether that's through a plan or a round of testing, or just through TransIT in general. If you have an issue assigned to you, it will then email you SMS, we don't currently have activated, but it is something that will be coming. So this email send to field, by default, it's going to be populated with your TransIT sign-on email address, but it is a free text field that you can type into. So if for whatever reason you want the notifications to go to a different email address than you normally use to sign into TransIT, you can just type over what's there with whatever email address you'd like to have notifications sent to. So even though we don't have the SMS notifications turned on just yet, it is still good to put your phone number in there for if you're testing. This information can then populate to the roster so that if people are needing to get a hold of you by phone during a round of testing, for example, then they can just refer to the roster and see what number they can contact you at. So the next section of the screen is our roster section. So the roster status, I am training today, so I'm going to type in this field to say what activity I'm currently participating as today while I'm inside TransIT. So the next, and again, that's just a free text field to type whatever it is you'd like into. The next is the positions, and the positions are for what positions you're going to be participating as during a round of testing. So I currently have EDMD and EDMD2 set up for my positions, but if I wanted to set up different positions for myself, I can click on this icon here, which is going to open the position coverage window. So I can then type into this search field whatever I'd like. Any of the search fields that you see across TransIT, once you've typed into, you can either press enter or you can press the magnifying glass to search. Either is going to work for you. So I found I'm going to say that I'm covering the EDRN and EDRN2 for testing. And so then I'm going to save. And so you can see that that's updated which positions I'm going to be covering. This information can also be added inside the testing area, but this is, I guess, the second place that you can enter it. This is still where you go to change your password. So previously, when I talk about the live TransIT, I'm going to refer to it as 4.x. And when I'm talking about this new release of TransIT, it's 5.0. So just in case I drop that and you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. So in 4.x TransIT, all that happened when you clicked your name link is you just got the change password field. So now we've added some additional fields to this window. So as I mentioned before, your password is still free to be whatever passwords you'd like. There's no character specifications, no capital letter and fancy characters. So then I'm going to go back to my home page or my projects page. So I clicked home, and home is going to bring you back to your projects page just like it always has. So one thing that you'll notice across TransIT as we go through is that there's a much more clean and streamlined look to everything that we have. So there's far fewer icons. Most of your actions are going to be completed by a right click either from the header or a right click from something that's inside your window. So if let's say that for whatever reason I had a large number of projects, if I wanted to see, if I wanted to filter my columns or change the columns that are here, I can filter here and I could type in the name of the project that I'm looking for. So I did that from right clicking and selecting filter. I could have also done that just by clicking this funnel icon here. So if I want to remove that filter, I'm just going to click the icon and delete the details that I had typed into there. So you're going to see that everything has a kind of grid-like feel to it. You'll also notice that the header is going to be frozen to the top for all of the different windows, which I know is something that was requested several times within TransIT. If you are wanting to copy tasks from one project to another, so here we have 3 additional projects on top of our current state. So let's say I'm setting up I have a new project that I'm working on and I want to copy tasks from one of my projects to the other or from current state to the other. In 4.x TransIT, it was done by a link or an icon where you clicked copy task, then you had to select the link for the project that you're wanting to copy to. So it was several steps involved, but it's been much more simplified now. So if I was wanting to copy a group of tasks from one project to another, all I'm going to do is click on the first task that I want to select and go down to the last task that I want to select, hold shift and then click, and it's going to select everything that's in between. If there were ones that I wanted to skip, I could also hold control and then select ones. Oops, I did not mean to click on the name link there. Sorry. Oh, didn't go anyways. And so you could select that way, which is pretty standard Microsoft functionality. So if I wanted to copy tasks from this project to another, I can then right click and I can select copy. I can then go back to back home. I can select the project that I wanted to paste these tasks into. I will right click my header here and then I will paste. And so now those tasks have been copied from my current state project into this rollout project. So that's our first difference within TransIT 5.0. I'm going to go back to my current state project now. So I'm going back home. And I'll go into current state to start looking at the changes to our tasks page. So for starters, overall, same thing I said, we've got the same header, same header on all the pages, how it's frozen to the top, and the actions are available when I right click. And then you'll see if you hover your cursor over any of the header fields, you'll see that there's a funnel icon displayed, and then there is a sort icon that's displayed as well. So obviously based on depending on which kind of window we're under, the header fields might be a little bit different, but they will all have the similar functionality, and they will all have a right click menu. There will be slightly different options just depending on where you're at. But kind of the rule of thumb when it comes to TransIT 5.0 is all of your actions basically are done from a right click. So when in doubt, right click. So another thing to point out, in the top corner, we still have the icon for importing tasks from global. What's different about that is when I click on that icon there, you can see that instead of it just being import tasks, this window, you can import both tasks and workflows at the same time. So let's say I want to go and import some workflows. I'm going to, I know there's some that are not imported. So you can use either your filters that are along the top here, or you can type into this field the same way you would normally. So I'm just going to type appointment and press enter. And it's going to search for all tasks that have, all tasks and workflows that have appointment in it. Let's say I only want to look, I only want to look at workflows, and I'm intending to import. So I'm going to make sure that I'm including global content. And I press enter. Now it's returned a different search for me. So there's two icons that you can see display beside all of the search options. So the first icon is indicating that the workflow that I'm looking at is a global workflow. The second icon is indicating that it is indeed a workflow. So when I didn't have the the workflows only, there was no icon displayed beside the search options. So these icons, that's what they display: global and then workflow. When I'm ready to import, I can either individually select the options here, or I can select this select all box, and it's going to select everything for me. One thing you'll probably see, you probably notice, is that when you hover over, excuse me, the description column, it gives you a view of what is actually inside this workflow. So I know that before we had the show and hide hyperlinks to see kind of the tasks that were inside a workflow. But that is no longer something that's inside TransIT. You just hover over the description and it tells you exactly what the workflow is, which is much nicer to have the view of what's in there before you import something. So I selected the workflows that I wanted to select, and then I'm going to click import. So the first thing you're going to notice is that it tells me that the workflows are going to import in the background. So I can say okay. And so all that's telling me is I'm free to continue on with what I was doing inside TransIT while the system continues to generate those workflows in the background. Something else that's really cool is that previously, if you wanted to import a workflow into TransIT, you first needed to make sure that all of the tasks that were inside that workflow had already been imported into your organization. So the first step should have always been to search for any new task that needed to be imported, and then you'd go to workflows and you'd import the workflows that you needed. If you hadn't done things in that order and you imported a workflow that had tasks that were not brought into your organization yet, those tasks would just be missing from the workflow altogether. But now when you do the import, if you select a workflow, it's going to automatically bring in any task that is associated to that workflow at the same time. So that's a big time saver there. So if that task already exists in your organization, the system just knows that that task is already there. But if it doesn't exist yet, it's going to bring that in for you. So it's kind of a one-click versus several steps to do the same thing. So the next icon is to create a new task. You're going to notice that across all the different screens inside TransIT, you're going to get this same icon in the top left corner for creating a new of whichever item you're under. So in this case, we're under tasks, and this would be where we create a new task. So if I click this icon, we get a slightly different window now. So it's still the same. Task. Previously, the service and subservice drop-down list came before the vendor, but now the vendor has been put to the top, then service and subservice. So you can still either select from the drop-down list, or you can type into this field, and it will select the option that's in your organization. And then the services and services are all going to be the same. So any vendor, any service, subservice, position that's been created previously in your organization, those things are all still going to exists in your 5.0 version of TransIT. And so while we're going through training today, you would be signed into your own organization. So everything that you're looking at would be your own content, but this is a safe place. So if you wanted to make changes while you're practicing all the clicks inside TransIT, any change that you make during a training session is not going to be retained. So when we go live with 5.0, anything that we do during this class is not going to be available in your regular build. So don't try to create things that are really going to be super meaningful going forward. Just do things that get you comfortable with what the actual clicks are now like inside TransIT. So I'm finished doing everything for the outside of my task, and I'm going to click save. And so it's brought me now into the task steps page. So this step is a brand new step, so it of course doesn't have any steps added to it. If I wanted to add a step, as I said, it's going to be the same icon that's in the top left corner. A big change when it comes to adding task steps is that we no longer have roles. So when you were creating tasks before, you had to select a role, and then all of the positions that you have in your organization existed underneath that role. But that is no longer the case inside TransIT. Roles have just disappeared altogether. So instead, we just have positions inside TransIT. But at the task level, you don't have to select the position that you want to complete the step. When you go to use the task inside either a workflow or inside a scenario, you're automatically going to have the option to select any position that's available inside your organization. So I know sometimes you create your task and then you go to use your task and you realize, oh no, the position that I meant to select for this particular scenario isn't selected. And so there was that second kind of drop down list that was more recently added. But then before, you just have to go to the task itself and add the role to the task and then go back to your scenario to be able to select the position that you want to select. So that's all gone away. It's much easier to just select the position that you want to select at the time that you're inserting it into either a scenario or if you're wanting to select it at the workflow level. Another change that you'll see here is we still have our details field, and it still works the same with clicking on it. It's still going to give me a number beside for however many times I click the details field. But what has also been added, if you click this drop-down list, these are all of the header fields. So if you were to, let's say I want address added here, if I wanted an address field, all you do is you select the option that you want from the drop-down list, and it's going to put that field inside brackets inside the task for you automatically. The same can be done at the in the outcomes. So that'll save you time from having to type bracket field name bracket. If you're wanting to use multiple of the same field inside a task, it does not give you the number. So with details, I could click details several times and it's going to add a number for the number of times that I've added the details. But if I try to add, so let's say I selected something else and then I added address again, it's not going to give me a number. So you need to, if for some reason you are needing more than one of the same field inside a task, which is probably pretty unlikely, you just need to type the number into the brackets there, and it'll function exactly as you expect it to. It'll pull from the header of the second of that particular header field. So that's a nice change. Your products and applications are all going to look the same as you're used to seeing them. Watch this. Here. And so it's still going to look the same. If I was wanting to make a change to my task, as I said, now basically everything is done from a right click. So instead of right clicking the header, in this case, I'm wanting to change a specific task step. So I'm going to right click on the step that I want to edit. So when I right click, you can see that you have all of these options available to you. You could insert above, you could edit, you could copy, and then obviously after you copied, you could paste. You could use this right click option to change the product, the application, or the function. You can duplicate the step, or you could copy to Clipboard. So anywhere that you see copy to Clipboard means that you copy whatever's there, you open up Excel, you paste into Excel, and then from Excel, you're able to copy and then paste from Clipboard. Here is saying that you're pasting from Excel into TransIT. And then, of course, inactivate if you want to get rid of a particular step. You'll see that it has Control-C and Control-V displayed beside. And that's because you can also complete those actions from your keyboard. So things like Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste do work now inside TransIT, which they never have before. I'm going to go back to my tasks page now. Okay. And so I'm going to just delete. So I obviously just created two kind of garbage tasks. So I'm going to select both of those tasks and I'm going to right click and I'm going to select to inactivate. Copy still works the same inside TransIT in that if you're copying a task that already exists inside TransIT, you need to change something about the task in order to make a copy of it. And so by that, I mean you either need to change the name slightly or it needs to be a different vendor or a different service or subservice. You can't have two of the exact same task name and number. If you're wanting the same task name and number, it just needs to it just needs to have a different vendor, service, or subservice. But if you change the name to something different, then it's still going to assign a different task number, which is the exact same as it always has been inside TransIT. You no longer have the search icon, and that's because the search has been put down in this area here. So we also no longer have advanced search, and that's because we have so many search options that are available to us from using the column headers and then also this drop down list here. So if I click this drop down list here, you can see I can say that I want when I'm typing into the search to be either by any field, looking at any field, the name, number, or description of the task, the service or subservice, or the vendor. So let's say vendor, I want to look at tasks that are 3M. So I selected vendor, I typed 3M into the search and I pressed enter, and then it's returned all of these options for me. So I'm going to actually search on so after you've done a search, as I said, you have the option to use your filters on the headers to make changes as well. So let's say I've searched on visit, comma, and I only want to see the tasks that are Cerner tasks. I can then come to my my filter here, type Cerner. And so now it's searching on all of the tasks that have visit, comma, and are Cerner specific tasks. So the next change that you'll see inside TransIT, we've gone away with the icon that you would click to see where a task or workflow is currently being used inside a scenario. Instead, that information has been added under this number column. So you'll also notice that as you hover your cursor over certain things, you'll get messages about what that column is going to do for you. So in this number column, you can see that some of the tasks have a number, so either a 1 or a 3 in these cases, displayed beside them. If I hover my cursor over, you'll see that it's telling me that this task 3997 is currently being used in these 3 scenarios. If I click on that hyperlink, it opens this open scenarios window. And then it gives me all of the scenarios that have been listed there. And these are now actionable. So I can click on this. And when I do that, it's taken me inside the scenario. Right now, it does not take you directly to where that task is currently being used inside the scenario. I have logged an enhancement request to have it take you directly there. But for the moment, what you can do, so I was clicked on task 3997, I believe. You can click under this task column, click the filter. I can type 3997. And so now it's filtered through and it found exactly where that task is currently being used. So I can then go back to my tasks. What you'll notice is I just clicked the back button. So in 4.x, you were never ever able to click the back button. The back button did absolutely nothing inside TransIT. But now you have the availability to click the back button to take you back to the previous spot that you were. So I mentioned that we have these sort options. So I know that when I did training, I always recommended or let people know the way I always had my tasks sorted was by putting the most recently updated task to the very top. So that's still available by clicking this. If I click it once, it's going to bring the oldest tasks to the top. But if I click it a second time, it's going to bring the newest tasks up to the top. So I'm going to actually go back into a task. So at the task level, if I was wanting to, say, copy a task step from one task to another, or if I wanted to copy multiple tasks from one to another, in the 4.x TransIT, you would have to click the copy, move, multiple link. It would give you those arrows to be able to select the steps that you wanted. And then you'd have to select the copy to link. But now all you would do is you select whatever it is you're wanting to copy, you right click, you copy, and you go into the task that you're wanting to copy that to. In this case, I'm going to right click the header. When I do that, it gives me the paste to end option. What I could also do, let's say I wanted to paste this above the step that's here, I'd be able to right click the step and I could paste above. So in this case, I'll just opt to paste at the end because I'm actually just going to end up deleting this step or inactivating this step. Those are the major kind of changes that came with tasks specifically. Does anybody have any questions, or is there anything that you'd like me to go back over when it comes to tasks?
It's Danielle. I just have a question, and maybe I missed this, but like in our TransIT system now, when we click on current state, I believe it's all the global tasks that appear. So it sounds like moving forward, it's only going to show us what tasks we've actually used in that project, and if we need to add additional global tasks, we need to do that. Click on the global icon.
So kind of. So your
Okay.
current state is actually your content. So the tasks may have started off as global tasks. So anywhere that you see a task number that is a 4-digit number, it means that that task started by being imported into your organization by importing from global content. And then anywhere where you see a 6-digit number, that's a task that was either created. If I did work with your site, then I maybe created the task specifically for you guys, or it means that someone from your organization created the task. So anything that's here, it's still your content. It's just, it may have started as global content, or it may have started as a task that was created specifically for your organization. And then when it comes to putting them into a different project, you're more than likely going to want to copy tasks from your current state as opposed to tasks from global, because if it's something that's changing, for example, then you want to make sure that you're not, if the task changed from when it started as a global task and changed, like with Cerner, obviously Cerner's very configurable. So a task may be written one thing, but based on your site's Cerner build, the clicks might be slightly different. And so the task may have been updated to suit your build as opposed to however it was when it started as a global task. So you likely want to copy the task from your current state as opposed to importing the task from global when it comes to going from a new project. Does that make sense?
That does.
Okay, excellent. But again, so if let's say you're going to work on something and you do a search and you don't see the task that you're looking for, and you think, oh man, that means I need to start working on a new task. What you should always do before starting to do something from scratch is go back to this import and do a search here to see when you include global and either workflows or not, to see if something has been added inside global, because then you can at least have a starting point, because I always think it's nicer to start with something than to start with a blank page. So you could import whatever exists and then manipulate it however you need to to match your Cerner build. And so again, you'll see that when we go under workflows and you click that import icon, you're importing both tasks and workflows at the same time, which I think is nice to have it all kind of contained inside one. Are there any other task specific questions?
I've got a question.
Yes.
For those of us that have never created a scenario, workflow, or task, are you going to go over that today? How to add those and how they all come together?
So that was not the intent of these training sessions. So the training sessions are for just showing the changes from existing the 4.x TransIT to the 5.0, because I know there's a lot of people that are on these calls that have been using TransIT for years now. So if you're a site that is not familiar with any of the clicks from the start, then you'll need to reach out to our support, because that would be a much higher level of training that's required.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to move on to workflows. Okay, so as I mentioned, the same globe icon is displayed on the workflows page. And when you click on it, it is going to look the exact same. You also have a very similar search option. You can select from the drop-down list here, and under workflows, your options are any field, name, number, description, or vendor. There's no service or subservice listed here because we don't add that to a workflow. So you can select whichever option you want, and then you can type into your search. And then it's returned my search options for me. When you look at the bottom of the page, and this is going to be the exact same over under any window that we're at on TransIT, you can see that it says 1 of 2. So before with TransIT, you could select certain page numbers, or you could select to view 30 rows per page, 100 rows per page, or all. So that has gone away. You select your page using the bottom options here. But if you want to display everything, you right-click your header and you select page size all. So page size all should display on, I believe, almost every single page. And so now everything has been reduced to 1 page, and I'd be able to scroll all the way through this single page here. I'm going to do a search on visit. I'm going to stick with Cerner. For no other reason than it's the content I'm most comfortable with. And then you can scroll through the list here, and I'm looking again for the number that's displayed in the number column. So just like I showed you at the task level, you are able to look for workflows to see where a particular workflow is used inside a scenario. So I'm going to go with this visit, comma code, and it's workflow number 79. So if I click the link here, it tells me it's currently being used inside violent patient. I can select my workflow, and then it takes me inside that scenario. Should be showing me my workflow. Oh, sorry, I meant to type into this one. Actually, here's my workflow there anyway. So, like I said, I've logged a request to make sure that that's that you're taken directly to the spot in the scenario where either your task or workflow is used. It just hasn't been addressed yet because we do have another way of finding where that task or workflow exists. So, in case I didn't make this clear at the beginning, we are still working on a few kind of tweaks before we go live with TransIT. So there may be opportunities where we see something that doesn't work quite the way it is, and we do have known bugs that are logged that are being addressed and will be addressed before we go live. Oh, I want to go back to workflows now, sorry. Okay, so I am back to workflows. So I mentioned at the task level that we no longer, excuse me, sorry, we no longer have roles selected at the task level, but you are still able to assign a position at the workflow level if you find that that's something that saves you time. So if you have a workflow that's that you've created that, let's say 9 times out of 10 are done by the EDRN, then at the workflow level, you might as well select the position of EDRN so that anytime you go to use that workflow inside a scenario, you don't actually have to select the position, you can just pass by that. There's no reason why you have to do that. You always have the option to select the position at the time that you're adding it to the scenario. But if you're someone who's currently doing that inside TransIT, you like to make sure that the workflows you're using have the specific position that always completes that workflow, you still have that option to do so. So if I go, into this workflow here, what I can do is I can start at the top. Oh, actually, it looks like it's already been selected for this workflow. But what you would do is you would start at the top, scroll to the bottom, use your shift click, and then you have the right click option. And when you come to your right click menu, you would go to change and you would select a position that you want to have for that particular workflow. So again, it's up to you as an organization or even as an individual to decide whether or not you find that that's something that is a time saver for you. If you do, great, that feature's there for you. But if not, it's not something that you actually need to do. Then a change that we've made is interface transactions. So interface transactions are no longer selected at the task level. You can add them to either a workflow or you can add them directly inside the scenario. So to add a interface transaction, I'm going to select this workflow here. And I'm going to say that the transaction happens after, or the interface happens after this last step here. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to select add interface. When you do that, it brings you to the add interface page and it is going to give you a list of all of the interface options that are available. So in 4.x TransIT, it was a drop-down list that was at the bottom of either of your task, where you would select the option, then you'd have to click add to make sure it's added to your task. Whereas here, if you want to type into this field to narrow down your search, you have that option. But also you could just scroll through the list and you could select as many or as few interfaces that you want and click save. And when you do that, you can see it's added here into the interface column. When you do that, it also gives you this click to add details link. So in 4.x TransIT, anywhere that you had a details used, you saw details shown inside the brackets. So now instead, you're going to see this click to add details field instead. So if I was to click on that, instead of it opening, I guess, like a text field right down where you were inside the workflow or scenario, it now opens this edit details window where you're able to type in it whatever you want. So you still have the option to use the bracket fields when you're working inside of a details field of a workflow or a scenario. So let's say I want details to be the patient's name. I can still type bracket patient name and bracket and click save. And that's still going to show in blue because it's details added at the workflow or the scenario level, just like you can see that has been done over on the side here. So details are still going to work the exact same. So you're mostly going to see more of a visual change with TransIT, and then addition of features that make things a lot quicker for you, as opposed to we haven't taken away anything major. So so you should just notice a lot of additions that make things a lot easier. Does anybody have any questions when it comes to workflows or anything that you'd like me to go back over? No, okay. I think we are just going to take a maybe 10-minute break here to give everybody an option if you need to use the restroom, or if you want to take a moment to practice some of the clicks yourself. And if you have any questions, just let me know. But we'll take just a quick 10-minute break now. Okay, I think we will get going again. Before I move forward, does anybody have any questions about workflows or anything that I've shown previously? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to move on to scenarios now. So scenarios, again, has that same icon in the corner to create a new one. There's all of the filter options if you want to be able to filter your list. So I know that before in 4.x Transit, everything was kind of hyperlinks that you could click on if you were wanting to sort your view, but that has been changed to now all being added to your header. So let's say I only want to look at the scenarios that are process scenarios. I can type into that filter field, and it's going to filter my list to only show me the options that are process scenarios. So I'm going to start by showing the changes for a scenario that is created directly in Transit. And then after, I will show what it looks like when you're going from a spreadsheet into Transit, because that looks quite different now as well. So if I click my icon to create a new scenario, I'm going to give my scenario name. The number field is still the same, so it's going to automatically generate the next number up in your list of numbers. So I'll just accept the number that's giving me. When you click the category drop-down list, you only have two options now. So you have functional and process. We previously had training as an option as well, so you could create training scenarios, but we did not have any clients that were actually using the training scenarios, so we just got rid of that option with 5.0. So I'm going to select a process scenario. You can then select the project that you want your scenario to be associated to, same as you could in 5.x. I'm just going to stick with current state in this case, and then click save. Which then takes me to the scenario steps page. So one thing you'll notice, and actually, sorry, I forgot to point this out on the workflow level, is that both from the workflow page and from the scenario page, when you clicked into either a workflow or a scenario, you first were taken to the either workflow tasks page or scenario tasks page. There are no longer the task pages. So as soon as you click into a scenario or into a workflow, you're automatically going to be taken to the steps view. And so instead of having that tasks page, the task numbers and the workflow numbers are going to be displayed in their own columns here. So I'm going to start adding a few workflows just to show you what it looks like. So sure, we'll start with appointment. So what you'll notice when you come to add either a task or a workflow to your scenario, you still have the workflows only checkbox, which you've always had, but you also have the include global. So what is interesting here is when you go to select a global workflow at the time that you're adding options to a scenario, it is going to import that workflow plus any task that doesn't exist inside your organization directly both to your scenario and also to your workflow content. So you can either add content from under the tasks and workflow pages, or if you're needing to add something, you're in a rush, you need to add something that exists in global but doesn't exist in your organization, you can add it directly to a scenario, which, like I said, adds it to both your workflows and your tasks. The only disadvantage of doing that is As I previously mentioned, Cerner is quite configurable, and so because the workflow is listed in one way in global content, it may actually happen slightly different at your organization. Maybe you have different tab names when it comes to your registration conversations or something like that. So you're always best to look at the workflow and make sure you make any edits that you need to make for your workflow under the workflow level before adding it directly to a scenario, but the option is there for you if you're wanting to take advantage of it. So I'm going to search on appointment, and then I'm going to keep the workflows only and the include global, and I'm going to press enter to search. So when I have done that, you can see that it has those same icons that I pointed out before. So the globe to show me which are global, and then the workflow icon to show that I am selecting a workflow. You'll also notice that because I've selected to include global, it's showing me both options. So if I look at workflow number 1577, you can see that there's one that has the globe and one that does not. And so you want to make sure that if you're going to be adding a workflow to your scenario, if there's two, that you're always selecting the one that is appropriate for the one that's already been imported, because the assumption would be that if changes were needed, that those changes have already been made to that workflow. But so if you know that your content is already documented for everything that you're going to be adding to your scenario, you might as well leave off this include global check, because then there's no confusion. You just do a search and you can see that now every single workflow that I'm looking at is going to be a workflow that's already been imported into my organization. After you've done your search, you do have the options to filter or to sort if you're wanting. I'm going to filter to select some Cerner workflows. So I'm going to just quickly throw together a short scenario. So let's just do, I guess I'll do for a schedule. We'll just select this one. So as I pointed out under workflows, or when you're importing, if you are adding to a scenario, you can also, sorry, the window's a little flashy because of how much is there. When you hover over the description column, it is going to tell you exactly what the steps are inside the workflow that you're wanting to add. What you can also do is inside this window, you can select more than one workflow at a time, or more than one task at a time, whatever the case is. So I know that the first workflow that I want is to select this for scheduling an appointment. Then let's say I'm going to do a workflow for checking in the patient. So I'll select this next workflow. And I could keep going and select multiple, and it does know in which order I selected my particular workflows in. So when I'm satisfied with what I've selected, I can then click next. And when you click next, it's going to give you a view again of what all of those tasks and workflows looked like. So I know, because I know what the content is in these two workflows. My first workflow, here's the beginning of starting to schedule the appointment, which then finishes with the click OK. And then if I see down here, and you can also tell by the numbers beside, this is where my second workflow is. So even though in my list, the check-in was listed first, I selected the workflow first to schedule the appointment. And the system knows which checkbox I selected first. So you can select the facility from the drop-down list there. You can still type into the day number field if you'd like. And then this is the opportunity where you can select the position. So just like in 4.x, if you forget to select the position when you go to add, you do have the option to change it once content has been added to the scenario. But let's just say I want to be the scheduler, so I can type into that field. I'll also blank that out. But it also, if I just click the drop down list, you can see that it has every single position in my organization available for me to select. So I'm going to click save. And I've added these two. So now you can see in the two columns off to the right side here, you can see it's telling me what the task name and number is and what the workflow name and number is. The orange line that you see here is separating because this above the orange line is my first workflow and my first task, so it's going to separate the tasks inside your scenario. It would also separate if a new position picks up, new position starts having steps. If you're looking at this and you say, I really don't care about seeing what the task name and numbers are or workflow name and numbers, and you don't want that to be cluttering up your view, you can right click the header and you can adjust what columns that you're seeing here. So let's say I don't care about seeing the task and workflow names. I can just deselect those from my column options, and you can see now they're no longer on my view. Of course, if I want to get that back, it's just the reverse. I'm going to go and I'm going to select those two. So you have the flexibility to really set your view to be whatever feels good for you. You also have the option, if I was to click and hold, I could pick up this column and I could move this column here. So if you decide you'd rather see the workflows before you see the tasks, you have that option as well. Or if you prefer seeing the facility column earlier, you'd be able to drag that all the way over here. It's however you want your view to be set up. If you were to log off and come back, it's not going to retain however you set it. It is something that you'd have to set every time. And if you were to make a change, it doesn't affect everybody else. So if you're inside a workflow and you decide you don't want to see certain things, the next user can still go into that scenario or workflow and still see everything that they would normally see. And it's up to them to decide whether or not they want to turn on or off any of the columns. Another big change here is that you'll notice that there's no longer the black arrows that are along the left-hand side here. So there were two options. When you were on the scenario tasks page, you had the hyperlink where you could click the copy, move, delete multiple. And then after you click that, you'd get the arrows to select all the tasks that you wanted to select. Or if you were under the scenario steps, it was just the black arrows that were automatically there. So instead, it's the same same kind of functionality I've showed you before. So you'll select the first task that you want to select, you hold down Shift, and you select the last task that you want to select, and then you right click. And when you right click and you go to your change, you can see, so because I'm currently under a process, I've created a process scenario. It's got my options as change position, day, or facility. Whereas if I was under a functional scenario, my change options are going to be position, section, and facility. So you just select whichever option you're wanting, and based on whichever option you select, it's going to open a window that's appropriate to whatever change you were making. And so you could then, in this case, select a different position if you wanted to and click save. It's still quite simple to move things above, so it would just be a right click to cut. So again, before when you were moving something The option was you would click a move link and then it would display paste above all the different spots inside the scenario, where instead it's a cut, or so either selecting from the right click menu or a Control X, and then you would click above, and then when you do that, it'll tell you what you've selected. So I had previously selected all of these. It's then going to, when I right click above where I want to paste, I could then do paste above. You also have the option to right click the header and say paste to end, whichever option is appropriate for you. So it doesn't matter what changes I make, I'll just do a paste of I'll paste above here. All right. Same as if you wanted to copy, it's just a multi-select or a single select with a right click and a copy. So from the scenario steps page, at the moment, unfortunately, there's no right click option to get to the scenario header. That is already logged to have that added. It just has not been added at the moment. If I'm wanting to get to my header, I'm going to have to go back to the scenario page. And again, that's just for the moment. And then I'm going to right click on my scenario and I'm going to select Edit Header. So the scenario header page looks much different than what you're used to. So in 4.x, you would have had the whole list of what the fields are displayed here, and then you'd just be able to type in the fields, or if you needed to add an additional field, you'd have to click to add the additional field, and then it would display that field for you. So it's much different now. Instead, you're going to click this pencil icon here. When you do that, it opens this testing scenario header window. When you click the field drop-down list, you'll see the full list of what all the different header options are for you. So you can type in here as well. So let's say I want to select the patient name. I can do, let's say I want to do patient last name. When I select that, it then gives me the field to type the value. So I'm going to and save, and that's added here. I can then go back to add my next field. So ideally, we've logged an enhancement to request to be able to have this window stay open so that you can do multiple entries at one time before it closes. That functionality is not available yet, but it has already been logged to have the window stay open. But for now, you do need to click the pencil icon each time. So I'll just add another field. So I could just continue adding as many fields as I want. Let's say you wanted to add, let's say you wanted to add an additional of the same field. You have the option to right click that field and select add another. When I do that, you can see that the field automatically knows, because I'm adding another and I already have just one, it knows that my entry now is allergy number 2. So at the task level, if you're wanting to pull from the header, you need to make sure that this is exactly how your task reflects, so that it pulls from this appropriate header field. So you can just keep adding in that way. And if you need to edit, it's just a simple right click and edit detail, and it'll just bring that field back for you where you can edit whatever you're needing to edit. And if you want to inactivate to get rid of something from your header, you just inactivate that option. So any page that you're on in TransIT and you're wanting to view the inactive list. So before it was that strange trash can with a magnifying glass icon that everybody thought was actually the search icon. So that icon, of course, has gone away. And so if you're wanting to now view your inactive entries, you would just right-click the header and select to view the inactive options. So that view inactive is going to be available under all of the windows that it normally always is available under. So again, there is no direct click to get you back directly into the scenario steps page from here. That has been logged as an enhancement request, but it's just not available quite at the moment. So you do need to go after you've finished with your header options, you need to go back to your scenarios in order to be able to select the scenario to go back to the steps. So we can look at what the header looks like for one that has much more detail in it. So if I right click here and view edit header, now you can see that that has much more detail added to it, which is probably more so like the lists you're used to seeing, just a much cleaner look to how everything is. So I'm going to go back into this scenario. So again, I have I'm on page 1 of 7 pages for this scenario. But let's say I want to look at all of the steps for this scenario all at one time. I can do the page size all, and it will load and show me all of the steps on the one page. You can see in this particular case, this has some interface transactions that were turned on. So again, to add interface transactions, it's now done at the workflow or the scenario level as opposed to the task level. So if I'm wanting to add an interface transaction, I'm going to right click and do add interface. So it looks the same as it's going to look when you're doing it under workflows. So you get the exact same window. So I'm just going to, I'll just select a couple of these. I'll select whatever I'd like to select and click save. And so now those have been added in the interface column for my scenario. And again, still having the option to click to edit any of the details that are in here just by clicking the click to add details. And you get the same window that we saw when we were under workflows. Are there any questions about the scenario functionality just from a scenario that's actually created in TransIT before I move on to stuff that's been uploaded? No. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my scenarios page. So as I mentioned, we no longer do an upload of an Excel-based script. It's done in a much different way. So for starters, I'm going to click to create the name of the scenario that I want. So I'm still going to give it a name, the number, and select the category and click save. And so now it's taken me inside to the scenario steps page, just like I showed before. And I'm going to open an Excel spreadsheet. So when you went to upload a spreadsheet before, you would click the upload spreadsheet link, and it would give you this page that said a list of requirements of how your spreadsheet needed to be set up in order to be able to upload it. So now all you need is you need to make sure that your column headers match what you have inside TransIT. So I'll go back, you can see all of the header fields that I see here are the same as what I have on my spreadsheet. Now you don't need to add the anything to the tasks and workflows column. Even if you have existing tasks and workflows in your organization, it's not going to recognize them if you put them into these fields here. It's going to create a duplicate. So if you are wanting to insert existing TransIT content into an uploaded spreadsheet, then you'd want to do the upload piece first and then do the copy and paste option to move the tasks from the one scenario and paste them into the scenario that you're wanting to add. So if I'm wanting to create my scenario from Excel and have it into TransIT, so like I said, I've got all my header fields matching what's inside TransIT, but there's no longer a need for it to be a specific version of Excel. It's still not going to recognize your merge cells, so you need to make sure that there's no merge cells. But otherwise, all you're going to do is do a highlight of everything you want to copy. I'll just copy some here. That's good. And then you do right click and you copy from Excel. And then I go back to TransIT. I right click my header. And this time I'm going to select paste from Clipboard. When I do that, it first is going to give me this window to show me these are the things that you're telling me you want to bring into TransIT. So you can see it's pulled in all of the same positions, vendor, products, actions, outcomes, facility, etc. So if it's not recognizing something that you have in your spreadsheet, it's going to display like this in red. So when you're uploading a spreadsheet and you think about the way the applications and the functions are created in TransIT, the kind of level of hierarchy goes product, application, function. And in 4.x TransIT, all you need to have is the function option, and the system already knows what the application and the product is that are ahead of that. So if in this case, I have the task set to be in Power Chart and Power Plans, I probably have it either typed incorrectly or whatever the case is. It's going to just back it up to Power Chart. So it doesn't recognize this Power Plans that I have, but it does recognize Power Chart. So it's going to back it up to the Power Chart level. So it'll go back to the level that it recognizes. If you have positions that are listed in your spreadsheet that do not currently exist inside your organization build, then it's just going to blank out those fields, and you would just need to do a right click and edit to add the positions from a list of positions that do actually exist inside your organization. Another thing you'll notice is that It doesn't, from this particular view, it doesn't recognize certain characters. So I'm sure there's been times where you've uploaded a spreadsheet that had certain characters in it that TransIT didn't necessarily recognize. So you end up having in your step a bunch of funny characters as opposed to what you previously had in your spreadsheet. So although it looks funny from this view, as soon as I click save and I scroll through, you can see that it does in fact recognize those characters, and it still looks the same way you expect it to based on what your spreadsheet looks like. So just like how it is in 4.x, when you upload a spreadsheet, and in this case, when you paste from Clipboard for a spreadsheet, it still assigns new tasks. So new task names and numbers. So it assigns that ZZZ with whatever the whatever the name of the spreadsheet, I guess, was, and then a 6-digit number to be associated to. So that's still going to happen. I know that I had somebody ask in a previous class if I was to copy from TransIT, paste into Excel, and then copy back from Excel to TransIT with these numbers, will it recognize these numbers? And the answer is no, it doesn't recognize these numbers. It would just create a duplicate copy of that task.
Is there a reason why it's ZZZ?
I don't know, to be completely honest with you.
So the reason we went with that is because, yeah, so it needs to create a task number, and it can't possibly have the logic to figure out what the task is about. So what it does is it does ZZZ followed by, I think, the position that you've selected, followed by, I think maybe the application that you've chosen. So it has to give it a name of some kind. And so at least by putting in the position and the application, you sort of know when you're looking through all those ZZZ tasks, what type of task it might be. That's why we've always recommended that after you upload, that what you would do is if the content is good content that you want to reuse in the future, that you would go in afterwards and rename them and make them something that makes sense. But there's no way that in a upload or in a paste from Excel that we're going to be able to make sense of what the task was about for you.
I have trouble with renaming them.
And what do you mean by that exactly?
So I was walking through it yesterday too. If I right click and edit, or right click, I have to walk through it. I try to get rid of the ZZZ, but it then was sticking. And I think that was, let me see.
So I'm going to try it here, Danielle, because you may have found a bug. I haven't tried to rename anything since TransIT 5. Have you, Angela?
Not a 6-digit ZZZ. I've renamed global content, but I have not done it with anything.
Yeah, if I right click and I select edit, and then you have your task name and you do rename all, and I try to remove the ZZZ and click OK, and then save, it still shows the ZZZ.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why you're getting a rename all there.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
So what I just tried in our demo organization, I just went in and I right clicked on a task that had ZZZ, and all I did was take the ZZZs out and put a comma after. So it goes ZZZ, scenario name, and then nurse, and then, or sorry, then position, and then application, and then with a number in the middle. So mine let me do it.
Do that again.
Sorry. So I did it. I'm doing it on my window here. So all I did was I right clicked. I went and clicked edit. and I took out the ZZs. And I clicked
Yeah, it
save.
doesn't work for me like that.
But yours says
task
rename all,
name-
which if yours is saying rename all, it means that task is used in more than one place. So we'll have to test that offline and get back to
Okay.
you, Danielle.
Okay,
Okay?
that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't think I saw a rename all anyway.
Right, but if she's seeing a rename all, then it means that she's using it more. So she's uploaded it and then she's reused it in another scenario somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So I'll test that. I'll test that right now and we'll get back to you.
Because yeah, if it's a global task, you're never going to be able to rename. The only way you're able to select a different name is if you copy and assign a different name. But yeah, I guess your ZZZs are used in more spots. But when I freshly uploaded content, it looked like it allowed me to make the change.
Yeah, this is just for some background. I imported uploaded a spreadsheet into the TransIT 4X, and that's what I'm seeing in 5.0 and trying to rename.
Mm.
And that's how I'm getting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So I definitely have content here. These were all, okay, this one. So yeah, I'm not sure. As Patty said, we'll log that and we'll do some background on it on our end to see why that's happening, because it's not something that I personally am seeing myself. But we'll certainly get back to you about that.
That sounds great. Thanks so much.
Okay. What was I? Oh, yes. So when you want to edit a task and you're in either a workflow or you're inside a scenario, in 4.x, you would click on the hyperlink that was there for the task number. So now instead, you would right click and you would click edit task. And when you do that, it opens the task in a different window. So it's taken me to the task steps page. I have all the same capabilities that I have if I was under the task page. So I would edit, right click, edit step. I can make whatever changes I needed to make here and save. When I'm finished and I want to go back to my scenario, all I would do is X out of this window, and it takes me back to the scenario I was in. So if I exit out of this, I'm still right back into the scenario. So in 4.x, it was an icon that took you back, and now you're just closing out the window. So if I was under workflows and I did the exact same thing, it would be the same thing. It would be the window would open separately. I would make the changes that I want. I would X out, and it would put me right back into my scenario. By doing that, it also gives you the option to toggle back and forth. So go back and forth between the tabs to see your scenario and the task that you're making changes to, if you wanted to do that. So I think that is everything for scenarios. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I have shown for scenarios? Danielle, I'm not sure if you saw, but Patty put into the chat, can you please put the specific task number into the chat? I can't create it with my own content, just so she can try and work through that separate from us. So if there's no questions about creating a scenario or copy and pasting a scenario, oh, I guess I can show export. If you're wanting to export a scenario, you would just right click the header and select to export. It's still going to open that in Excel. Like it did before, and so it's giving me all of my steps here.
So that is still being worked on. So we noticed that it's not producing the header anymore as well as the steps. And so we're working on that. That'll be fixed before we go live though.
And so I noticed when I did it there, it did not have the tab for the header, but when I do it from reports, it has the header as a second tab. I assume that is going to be synced together when I export from here as well. I maybe didn't ask that appropriately as a question. Patty?
Sorry, I was I was thinking about the Concord issue here. Sorry, can you state that again? I wasn't listening.
Didn't really ask it in a proper English question. So when I did the right click here and I exported to Excel, and it opened in Excel, it only opened the one tab. Whereas if I do it from reports, it has one tab for the header and one tab for the steps. But when we go live and I do an export from here, it should
be
have
the same. Yep, it'll be the same as the report. And so there was a bug that was found yesterday using the old report. And so we know we have to regenerate that old report, and it's not available under here from the export. And the export only has the one tab at this time. So when we go live, both will work and both will be just what you're used to seeing. So the difference between doing it here and doing it in the report is doing it in the report will allow you to do more than one scenario at one time. And both will still have the header information and still have the tab.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
And maybe I don't need to mention this, but there was an issue with one of the sites exporting here. Is that something that we need to mention so that if other people have it, there's a setting that they need to turn on, or is that something separate?
Sorry, I was still thinking about the
Other issue.
say that again.
So yesterday when some of the one of the sites was trying to do
now I know what I don't even have to have you finish. Now I know, no, it has nothing to do with the internet settings. It's something in the new grid format that doesn't work. And so that's why it's been replaced by this one that's just quick right now that only has the one tab. So although Covenant was the only one having the problem yesterday, anybody could have had it. I think it was because Covenant has completely filled out test script headers, and there was something that was making it bomb because of that.
Okay. So I'm bringing up things I don't need to.
Now let me look at the Concord thing.
Okay, so if there's no further questions in regards to scenarios, nothing you want me to go back over, then I'll move into testing. Okay, so the first change I'll point out with when it comes to testing is when you would click testing from the blue bar, you were previously taken to the test execution page. The test execution page has been renamed to the test rounds page. It's still the same page, just a different name and a slightly different look about it. In the testing column here, the links that you see are now named slightly differently. So before, there was no day number before. Instead of saying continue day 1, it just said continue testing, or it said start testing. So now those links have been renamed slightly different, and you would still just be able to click the link to go directly into the steps for the scenario that you're clicking on. If you're wanting to put a scenario on hold, it's just a matter of selecting this unchecked box beside the scenario, and it's going to tell you in the testing column that it's on hold. And all that you would do to take it off hold is just obviously deselect. So in TransIT 4.x, you would have a hyperlink that you would click to put it on hold, and so now it's just been replaced by a checkbox. You should recognize all the icons that are displayed here, but you'll notice that it no longer has the position dashboard icon. And so the reason for that is that it has been consolidated into a filter basically that's available inside the test dashboard. So if I click the test dashboard icon here, so the same icon that you're used to seeing, and so that's now still going to take you to the test dashboard that shows you everything. But if I'm wanting to just get my the steps that are specific to my position, I can click this position dashboard icon, which I believe is the exact same icon that it is in 4.x. But what happens when you click the icon here is it filters to only show me scenarios that my position is active in. Now, if you had not set up positions for yourself, as I showed at the beginning using the user settings, then when you click that icon, you would have seen that position coverage window that I showed at the beginning, which I will show again. But because I already had positions set up for myself, I was able to just click that icon, and so then it filtered for me. So in the position column, it just shows me the position. So I set myself up for both EDRN and EDRN2. So if there were any steps that were for EDRN that were up next, it would show me here. So now we have this waiting column. So this is telling me that in this ED treat and release scenario, the EDRN is up in 9 steps. If I was to use the, sorry, as you just saw there, it just said loading. Why I said that is because the test dashboard is automatically set to auto refresh. So in 4.x, if you wanted your screen to single refresh, you would click refresh. Or if you wanted to turn on the auto refresh, you would have to turn on the auto refresh, click the hyperlink. So you no longer have to click a hyperlink, it's just automatically set. It currently is set to refresh every 30 seconds, which I believe Patty is asking to be changed to a longer duration. But for this moment in time, it is set to refresh every 30 seconds. So if I am the EDRN and I have steps that are up that, so although it says that there are 9 steps up before my steps are due, if I was wanting to execute those steps ahead of time, I can click the action column. So you obviously want to make sure that if you are doing that, that you know that you're okay to go ahead with those steps. So there's certain things that you do from a workflow perspective that you don't need to wait on other steps before you complete your steps. But obviously there's going to be certain things that you want to make sure you're not completing out of order. But if it's something from a workflow perspective that you know you're able to complete before you wait for these 9 steps to be executed on, I can click the action column, and that's going to take me exactly to my place in the scenario. So I'm at the top here, and I'd be able to start executing on my steps. I'm not going to execute just yet. I'm going to go back. I'm going to click my back arrow. And it's taken me back to my same dashboard here. So if I want to first, let's say I'm pretty sure I can complete these steps that I'm waiting on, but I want to make sure that before I do so, I review what the steps are in the scenario. Instead of clicking from the actions column, I'm going to click from the scenario column. And what that will do is that then brings me to the very top of the scenario. So you can see the reg clerk has steps to complete, and then that's where I am with the EDRN. So in 4.x, both the action column and the scenario column did the exact same thing, and so now they have slightly different functions. Another thing that you'll notice when I'm looking at my scenario or my test steps is you've got this coverage, position coverage icon that's displayed. So in 4.x, it was indicated by a green underline, and when you hovered your cursor over it, told you who the people were that were assigned to cover that particular position. Whereas now it's replaced with this person icon, and same thing, you can hover over to see who the people are that are covering that particular position of the scenario. So again, I can click back to get back to my position filtered dashboard. If I want to get rid of the position filter and I just want to see the whole dashboard again, I'm going to right click on the position column, and I'm going to select to remove the position filter. So when I did that, it now just shows me all of the positions and all of the scenarios that are up for testing. So if I hadn't preset my my positions and I wanted to set them, you could click that icon, which would have a window open. But since I know that I currently have already preset them, I want to show you the window. If I right click the position column and I select positions to cover or filter on, I can type into here. So I have EDRN selected, but let's say I'm going to be EDND. I can search in that window and select my positions and click save. And so now it's going to do the same kind of filter on my my dashboard based on the positions that I had selected. So as I said, that window that you just saw me open, if you hadn't set your positions up under your user settings from your name, if you clicked that icon, you would have seen the window that I just showed you there. So again, to remove those position filters, I'm just going to right click the position column, and I'm going to select to remove the position filters. So looking at kind of the majority of what's displayed on the dashboard, everything else is pretty much the same. So you still have your icon. So this icon is still telling me that none of these scenarios have been executed on in the last 10 minutes. If it was 12 o'clock noon, I would have that icon to show that that I'm at least 50% of the way through the day, and I have not completed at least 50% of the steps for my scenario. So it's just that warning to say, hey, you may be falling behind on this particular scenario. But then all of the, remaining pass flag issue skip, all of that still is brought to this dashboard to show you the number of steps. By default, the test dashboard is automatically set to show you just today's steps. However, if you wanted to see all of the day steps, if I click this icon here, that is view all dates, it will expand out and show you all the days for testing. And I can click the back arrow to get rid of that. Okay, so now we will go, sorry, I'll just point out these icons that you should be familiar with. They are still the same, still do the same things. So this is still the test report, the summary chart, and then the issue list. We will click into those after. So let's start executing on this first scenario here. So you are able to still individually pass steps by just clicking the pass icon. When you do that, it immediately has that step fall off of the this test steps. Whereas before, when you pass the step, it kept the step there until you refresh your screen. So whether you went into a different scenario, or if you just click to refresh your screen or logged a note, something of that effect, it would keep your past steps there until the screen refreshed, whereas now the steps immediately fall off your view. You can see that the action icons have moved from being on the left-hand side, they're now on the right-hand side. And the only icon that you actually see is the pass. If I was wanting to select a different action, I would right-click and select from the drop-down list here. So let's say in this case, the step is fine to pass, but I want to make a note on it. I can select test note. And now the test note window looks slightly different. So let's say I want a script change here. I can select that from my note types. I can assign to, I'll just assign to the first person here and say, I can say whatever I'd like to, or whatever I think needs to be changed. I can view, I can click the second tab, and that's going to show me exactly what is listed inside the step that I'm making a note on. The next tab is attachments. So I would just click in this field here. It would open my my file browser. I'd select the file that I want to open, and then it adds it to the test note for me. So as soon as I've added any of the details that I want to add, I can then click save. And it then is going to display what the note is in the test note column. And so because all I'm asking for is a script change, there's nothing actually wrong with the step, I could just pass this step. If I say that there's, let's say I think that there's something wrong. So it's saying to click the next tab, and it says that the tab is called PCP. Let's say I'm not getting that tab and I want to instead flag that. I can right click and I can select flag. So just like in 4.x transit, flagging a step opens the test note window. So in this case, I can say, let's say this is an issue. I can assign it to somebody and say tab did not display. maybe an issue or something. I'm not going to bother to add an attachment and then click save. And so because I flagged the step, that of course is me executing on the step, so the step has fallen off of my view. I can also, if I was wanting to do multiple, so in 4.x, if I was wanting to pass multiple steps, I would use those black arrows on the left-hand side and then select the appropriate action. In 5.0, it's similar functionality to kind of what you've seen everywhere else. So a select and then a hold shift and select the last. And it's going to select everything in between. I can right click and then say pass step. And it's going to pass those. Or let's say if I want to skip the steps, it's skipped those for me. From this view, if I was wanting to see more, so I know that skipping steps is something that does happen from time to time during testing. So let's say something happened, and so we skip the steps until the issue could be rectified, and until we're able to go back and actually act on those steps. So let's say I want to view my skip steps again. I would just click this filter icon. So by default, it's automatically set to only show the remaining steps. So if I was wanting to also see all of the skip steps, because I know that I'm ready, because I'm ready to start executing those steps, I would just select skip from there. And now you can see it's showing me both the remaining steps and all of the skip steps. So same thing, I would select shift and select the last. Right click and reset the status. And so now these are available again to be executed on. If I was to add ones that have been flagged, it's going to, of course, bring the status of flagged, and it's also going to bring back that test note for me. But likely you probably want to stick to viewing just remaining. And so if you want to get rid of your additional filters, you can just X them out, and they're going to be removed from your filter there. So if I want to go back to the test dashboard, I can either click the back button, or I can click this test dashboard icon, which is the same as the current functionality in 4.x. And as expected, because I did pass and flag some steps, those things have been updated on my dashboard here. If I'm wanting to view the test header, I can right click inside the header column here. I could have right clicked here as well, sorry. But just right click and select edit test header. And when you do that, it takes you into the test header where you are able to make edits. So if your organization at the scenario level has things like the MRN number or the patient name set as update before testing, something to that effect, you'll of course want to edit the test header. So it's just either a right click on the field, or if you're needing to add something, it's the pencil icon, which is the same as we saw under scenarios. And so if I want to go back to my dashboard, I can either click the back button or I can click my test dashboard icon. I could have also, from the test rounds page, I could have also right-clicked on my scenario name here and viewed the test header from here. So I know that in 4.x, you had no capability of viewing the test header from the test execution page, so it now is available from the test rounds page as well. So again, I could either go to my test rounds page, but in this case, I'm going to go to my test dashboard. Okay. If I want to go to my test report, so same as 4.x, I'm just going to click my test report icon. And it's going to take me inside and show me all of the notes that have been logged for my test round. Let's say I want to turn one of these into an issue. So this one was logged saying that the tab's not available. So if I right click on this and select issue, I can then, it then opens the issue window for me. I'm going to say it's a high, it's a build issue. By default, it's going to enter in reported by as me, but you can of course change that. So in 4.x, the reported by and assigned to fields, you were able to free text into. That's no longer the case. It does need to be something that's created under your user settings, which is something that if you're not seeing somebody or if there's something, so like a team, for example, like the regression team or the Access HIM team, something like that, if you need one of those created, you'll need to get in touch with whoever is set up to be an administrator at your organization, and they would need to create those under contacts in order for them to be available under the reported by field. And then assigned to is all going to be active users inside your TransIT build. So we'll assign it to this person. And you can say this is a build issue 6. Again, there's the tab, the steps tab that you can click on if you want to view what the step of the scenario or the test scenario is. And then I can click save. And when I do that, you can see that the issue details are now displayed off to the right-hand side here. I would also be able to edit this. So I can open my test note and give it an update to say script is completed and save. If I want to go into that issue and view what the updates have been, I can right click. Sorry, I can double click. No, I can open the test note again. And sorry, it's not. Oh, that I'm thinking of issues. I apologize. If I want to see the changes that have been made for an issue, it's going to show me the update history on it here. Patty?
Yep.
I'm having a bit of a lapse in my memory. I thought that from the test notes view that it also showed you the updates. Is that just issues?
Yes, where you can right click and see the updates. It's only in the issues.
Okay, sorry. That's my bad. Okay, and so that is your that's your test report. Your pie charts, your summary charts here still are going to look basically the same with the slivers to show what the status is of the notes and the issues that you have for your test round. Or I can go to the issue list. And so the issue list here is going to be the issue list that's for your particular round of testing. And so if I right click on one of the issues here, if I want to see all of the changes that have been made to that issue, I can select a few changes. And it gives me this window that shows me everybody who's made a change to this issue. If I let's say an issue has been fixed and I want to close it out. I can right click on the issue and I can say, well, let's first say that it's been resolved. I believe that the fix has been done, but I'm going to need someone to test it out. So I'm assigning it as resolved status and it's reported by me, and I'm going to assign it to somebody else and say, has been fixed, please. And I click save. So now that's changed the status to be resolved. It also shows the updates in the updates column over here. If I'm the person who has fixed the issue and I want to close out the issue, I can do the same. I can right click and I can select to close the issue. So it's going to do the same thing. It's going to open the issue window to allow me to do changes. So it's automatically, because I selected to close the issue, it's automatically changed the status to say closed. I can scroll down to see changes that have been added to the issue. So I previously typed this, has been fixed, please retest. So I'm closing this, and so I'm going to say all good and save. And so now that has been closed out. Just like everywhere else in TransIT, there's the filter options on the headers. So I can filter on the status to only show statuses that are currently in open status, because I don't care about ones that have already been closed or ones that have been resolved. So I can use that. And I can, of course, remove the filter if I need to remove the filter. I could also, let's say my issue list was really long and I wanted to search it for something specific, I'd be able to type into this field here. So let's just, I know that it says tab somewhere, so I'm going to type in their tab and search. And so now it's search all the issues that have the word tab in it. So that's issues from inside a test round. But there's also issues that are from that are going to be all of your organization issues, so not necessarily specific to just the round of testing that you're working on. So you can see that there's two icons here. So the icons over here are going to be ones that are specific to all of the issues, whereas the ones on this side are the issues that are specific to your test round. And I'm going to click this icon. So this first icon here, it says all issues. So as I said, it's going to be looking at all of the organization issues. So if I click that, it's going to show me all of the issues that I have for my organization. The next icon is all open issues. So again, that's going to be all open issues for my organization. So I can either click that icon or I'd also be able to adjust it under the status column header as well. So if I click that, it's going to filter to only show ones that are in an open status. The next icon is ones that are assigned to me. So I'd be able to click that icon to only view the issues that have been assigned to me. So lucky me, only two. The next icon is for all of the issues that have been recently viewed. So I can click that. And it'll show me the ones that have been recently viewed. If I want, there's this filter icon here. So if I click that icon, I can set certain statuses, certain filters. So if I go, I want to do all of the open the priority, let's say blocker and critical. And what it's giving you a message here, generate a URL which you can bookmark to filter the issues. So if I set the filters that I'm interested in having, and then I do create, there we go. It's filtered to go based on whatever I've asked it to, but also the URL that has been added, I'd be able to add this to my bookmarks. And then later on down the road, I'd be able to open the URL from the bookmark, which will take me right back to the issues page with the exact filters that I had put on when I wanted to bookmark. So let's say that you are the person who's responsible for the round of testing and you want to have a bookmark set to make sure you're monitoring to get all of the issues that are blockers or critical, and you want to be able to have an easy way to get back to access that list, you can save that URL for yourself to be able to get back to it. Of course, you could, choose not to do that and just use the filters here, but it's completely up to you. Okay, so all that I have left is just a quick look at reports. Does anybody have any questions about testing or issues? Nope. Okay. So I will move on to reports. So when you select reports, you can see now that we have quite a few less reports than we previously had. There were some reports out there that were never being used, and so we got rid of them because they weren't being used. There are a few reports that haven't been updated just yet for 5.0. That's still kind of a work in progress, but one of the biggest ones is the test planning report. So if I want to run the test planning report, I can click the test planning link there. You have the option of running an HTML version, which as it wasn't working yesterday, I'm not sure if it's been fixed, but I'm not going to look at that. I'm going to do the Excel version. So I can select to run a report. When it does that, it takes me to this window here where I can select all of the scenarios that I want to look at from a test planning perspective. So I'm going to filter to only look at the ones that are processed. And I'm going to select a few here. And I'm going to run my report. So when you run something like the test planning report, there's a lot that the system is looking at and takes some time for that to actually be generated. So now, as soon as you click to run, it's going to take you to this page here, and you can see that it is working on generating that report. But what you can do, so the reports are actually running in the background. So even though I've set to display my report, I'm still able to continue on my work. I can click around in TransIT to go elsewhere to keep working. It doesn't hold me back because I haven't viewed my report. I'm gonna go back to reports for a second here. In the top corner here, you can see that there's this new icon that's called View Generated Reports. So let's say I set to generate the test planning report, and then I moved on my way and I kept working on my scenarios that I was working on. I can then come back to reports and I can click this View Generated Reports icon. And when I do that, it takes me back to that window that we were at before the report output. And you can see that these are the two reports that I had generated. So the bottom one I had generated earlier. This is the report that I just generated. So now it's finished. It tells me it's completed. So I can then go in and open my report. There we go. And so it's going to open in Excel just like it previously, or like it currently does in 4.x. And the report's going to look the exact same. So it's got the two tabs, one that's the positions view, and then the second that's the scenario view. So it's a nice feature that you don't have to sit there and wait for your reports to run. You can continue on your day, continue what you were doing, and let the reports run in the background. So that's all of the new functionality that I was planning to show for today. Does anybody have any questions about either testing or just anything that I've covered today in general? Okay. So I can stay on the line now if people are wanting to practice playing around, since I know we were scheduled to go, oh, it looks like we're maybe an hour early even. So you are getting that time back, but if you still want to use it to sit on the call and click around and practice in 5.0, I can stay on the call and then you can call out if you have any questions. So I think I said at the beginning of the call, but if I didn't, this demo environment is going to be open for you to play in until we go live on May 29th. So you're welcome to play in it all that time so that you get comfortable before we go live with this version of TransIT. And any changes that you make or any play content that you develop, it's not going to be retained. So when we go live on May 29th, you will just have all the content that you currently have in 4.x. But if you don't have any questions or you're not going to use this time, then you're certainly welcome to sign off. But I will stay on for anybody who has questions. So I thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today.
Hey, Angela, it sounded like somebody had questions about content development at some point. So if they wanted to ask those now, that would be okay.
Yes.
Hey, Patty, this is Jackie. Did you say that we needed to do another class if we needed to learn how to actually add the task and into the workflows and scenarios and move tasks around?
Yeah, so these classes are supposed to be for people who already knew how to use TransIT. So if you have questions like how to add tasks into scenarios or how to create tasks or whatever, since Angela's going to sit on the line for another looks like 35 minutes, if you've got questions for her, she's happy to answer them now. So this class is for people who've already been through user training, and the same for the plans class is people who've already been through plans training. And if you haven't, then like I said, if you've got questions, she's willing to answer them. What site are you from, Jackie?
Covenant.
So were you not there when we did the training back in whatever year that was? So like you can ask Angela whatever questions you want right now, but the people who would be able to help you out the best at Covenant would be Travis or Fred, or actually somebody who's really a pretty strong user is Sherry.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I've been in transit and we do the testing for the integrated testing and it's just
Right.
marking the steps that are there. But in the last testing with STAR, I noticed that there was several things that we need to do that's not in there. We have to always do is a standalone test. And we really want to get those added to these scenarios.
Yeah.
So,
So Ange can help you right now, or like I said, Sherry builds her own content, and Travis and Fred both went through the training. And the idea was that they would be able to do training for anyone who didn't go to the original class.
mhm.
But you got a half an hour now, so ask away.
Well, in our scenarios, we have, of course, the first thing I need to probably ask Travis about, and that's who signed me up for the class anyway. So, but I guess there was a misunderstanding on my part that it was, like I say, the only thing I go in there is testing, and we mark the scenarios as pass or fail, and we have very few steps in the scenarios, and I want to add new steps to the scenarios. So, in the testing, I did add a task, but I don't know if I did it right earlier this morning. Um, and I can, I mean, I added it and under, at the very first part when you were doing the task.
Okay, and so I'm gonna stop the recording now. 1 second.